doing a film, like that's an amazing gig on paper. You get paid good money if it's a good budget film.
Mm-hmm.
You turn up and it's really hard work and you don't
Right.
enjoy it a lot of the time because the
Right.
work is hard. So
Right.
unless you really, really, really love it,
Yeah.
that's gonna be, I think, to reconcile.
The dancer died twice, and tonight we're gonna chalk them out. It's the podcast that talks about what dancers shouldn't talk about. Connecting all dancers from aspiring to retire. We had those conversations, yeah, we're here to light the fire. The dancer dies twice.
This next guest that I have is a force to be reckoned with. She's an absolute gem and an icon for the Australian industry. There isn't a gig underneath the sun that she hasn't done. I've had the privilege to share the stage with her in my early years, doing X Factor together. She's even been my boss at certain times too. And recently, I feel like when I tune into her world, there's just some new exciting thing that's always happening within the dancing community. I have a lot of respect for this person, and it's I feel very blessed to be able to have her on board. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Sally Dashwood.
That was so kind.
Hey.
What you said. Hey.
Honestly, Sal, no, like, thank you so much for like coming on board. And, I think like just having a bit of thought before, linking up, I was like, wow, you are just someone I feel like has just such an abundance of insight and knowledge into just not just like the industry, but just as a dancer, it's like as self, because usually I speak to a certain audience in this space, but who are like aspiring professionals. But you, I feel like, are well qualified to talk to professionals right now going through struggles, and even dancers who have like departed the stage, and who've had to go through retirement or might be struggling through retirement and stuff like that. So honestly, like, I just want to say, thank you, thank you for going on board. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I was having a little reflection because we haven't seen each other in the flesh for a really long time.
Yeah.
This is it's so flattering to be asked to do something like this by your peers, like the people that are sort of like in your generation of dancer that are off, like our sort of peers from the Australian industry, like they're all off doing like the most amazing things. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it has been like a hot second, Sal. Like, I feel like the last time I maybe have seen you was, gosh, I don't even remember. I can't recall. Was it maybe? Surely it wasn't just Joel and Rose wedding? Was it? No.
Oh yeah.
Hang on.
Maybe.
No.
Probably.
That was like, wow. Okay. Well, what's new in your life at the moment? Like, I know you got a kid and stuff, but like, do you want to share with the audience kind of something like that you're doing right now in this space? Something that you want to share? I don't know. Any goss?
Oh, what's the goss? That's why you've got me on here, just to find out this stuff. Well, for the first time, I actually have a full-time job, like doing like within this industry. I'm course coordinator now of a performing arts course at a really big dance school in Sydney, which is sort of wild to have like a contract that doesn't have an end date on it, as a dancer. The thought of that makes me feel uneasy. But yes, I have two little children. They're 5 years old and 3 years old, and my 5-year-old is at primary school this year, like first year of big school. So I sort of felt the need for that consistency that I've never felt the need to have before at this point. Yeah, so that's where I'm at, and it's a super fulfilling job, like guiding 18, 19, 20-year-olds in their first 2 years, like out of school, doing when they've all chosen to do full-time dance training. That feels really a lot like a privilege to do that. Big responsibility. That's where I'm at. Consistency. It's strange.
That's so interesting that you've mentioned that right now, because did you not ever seek that consistency earlier on when you were doing like performing as a dancer?
I feel like I've had moments actually where like, in my couple of moments of downtime, I'm like, quick, I'm freaking out. I need a job, or I need to direct this somewhere new, or whatever. So I did this job as a production coordinator for an arts organization, but it was like a couple of days a week. Still very much in touch with, dance and what that is, but more in the contemporary dance world. And I worked on the side of like putting on the productions, which I love, because at that point I was like, I want to produce my own show and make some stuff. So I felt like that was the way to gain some skills. And then, like, the first time Kelly Abbey asked me to do a gig while I was doing that job, the first time Kelly Abbey was like, hey, I've got this big, like, gig happening on the harbour. Then I was like, cool, stuff this job in an office. What am I thinking? And I left that job. So I've sort of had moments where I've craved it. I think a lot of people I've talked to over the years are like, when you're living the freelance life, you do crave the stability. And then once you have it, you're like, oh, I miss the freelance life. So that's definitely been me over the years. But for the most part, I've been really go with the flow. I've always loved teaching in between, which has been like bread and butter in the times where I'm not doing like a consistent contract or whatever. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you like contract work? Because I know you did Fame, right? Did you enjoy
I did that.
Did you like the consistency when it came to doing theatre versus like your one-off commercial gigs?
I loved that. I have no problem sort of getting on stage, doing the same thing night after night. Consistency in that way, it felt fresh a lot of the time. It's a hard slog, doing something 8 times a week, as you know. I also, the other probably most consistent gig I've done is like filming Happy Feet 2 for 8 months. The film.
Yeah.
Which was like a long stretch. Again, tough on the bod. But I would still fit in any other gig where I could while I was doing it.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I've got to start off. I could maybe fit in a thing here. But this feels, at the moment, like I don't know if it's because I have kids, but it feels like I could probably do this for a few years, which is probably the difference between like, I know this contract's going to happen for a few months, as opposed to like, maybe I'll be doing this for, 4 or 5 years or something like that.
Gotcha. Right. I can see it from that whole perspective. So when you said you're doing this course right now, I was trying to understand, is it for 17, 18-year-olds just getting into full-time, or is this a part of full-time, or is it post-full-time?
No, this is at Brent Street, like the first 2, they're like performing arts course, like heaps of our buddies have done before. So it's like they have a 2-year course. They get like an advanced diploma at the end of the 2 years, hard out training, Monday to Friday. Yeah.
Oh, I see. So you're like doing like a Jason Winters inside within the program. Is that what it is?
No, it's just like their course that has always existed, and now I'm the course coordinator of that performing arts course.
Oh,
like heaps of our friends have done it and taught there.
Gotcha. Okay. So course coordinator, right? But you're teaching and everything like that too, right? Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. So. Sorry. Go. What were you saying?
Oh, I thought you were talking. Sorry, I think I talked over you.
No.
Yeah, just like there's a whole theory side to that, which we have to sort of make sure these dancers are doing. And I'm in the studio with them quite a lot as well, which is really nice. And other than that, just like crafting that training, getting the people in that you want them to have, making sure they're getting the right sort of skills, because they've come from all walks of life, all different parts of Australia and abroad. And just making sure you're sort of I'm crafting a course for them that's going to really set them up for a career, at the early stages.
Wow. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, that is big responsibilities. And I love that you're in that position, because I can't see anyone else that's just as qualified as you are, and that's awesome that they have someone like you to be able to guide them through. Now, I think, I'm going back to sort of what you said before about falling back to do teaching and stuff like that in between gigs. How important do you think that is for dancers in Australia to have that skill, or just to be able to teach and stuff like that, to sort of rely on? Do you think it's almost like a necessity within our industry because we have lack of work, or do you kind of feel like, what, if that's kind of what you want to do, then sort of go for it, and if you do need to find other work, then it's okay to sort of find other avenues?
I think that a lot of the people that I think are really successful have sort of mastered that art of timetabling and scheduling. I've got a bit of downtime here, so I'm going to contact all the places that I want to teach at, and I'm going to fill up my schedule. However, I don't think if you don't want to teach, I don't think that you should. I had a bit of I took 2 years off teaching. I did a bit here and there, but I just recognized for the last couple of years that I didn't feel like I had much to give in a way, and I just didn't feel like I was going to be inspiring to a studio full of dancers at a point. Was doing a lot of choreography of musical theatre in Sydney. And that's where my head was at. That's what I wanted to do. So I sort of recognized for that period of time, I was like, I'm not feeling inspiring. So I didn't teach in that period. And I think that's sort of important to recognize. I think a lot of people, it is a responsibility. But you can also teach how you want to teach. If you want to put on open classes and teach some combos and some choreo, that's great. If you want, I love at the moment having a group of students that I know so well already in term 1, that I get to sort of really get to know and really train them the way that I would want to train them. That's what I get to do at the moment. So that's, you can do that to the level that you want. But yeah, I think also if you want it to be a career, you have to be smart about how you make money, which I think took me a long time to sort of work out. And so that might be being really proactive about contacting people and booking in the classes when you don't have work.
Are they aware of, I guess, the supply and demand of the Australian industry? Is that something that they get taught at the moment in class, or is it kind of, not the focus so much? Is it more based upon their training?
I've sort of been doing this. I got my cohort this year, and I'd started last year. So this is the first sort of we just got to the end of term 1, so I've had them for 10 weeks. And I always say I'm going to be nurturing, but I'm going to be really realistic. I believe that there's a place in this industry for every single person that wants to be in the industry. It might not be fresh out of full time, you're doing all the commercial gigs. That's rare. So you don't want to crush their dreams every day, and the messaging can't always be oh, it's probably not going to happen for you because the odds. But definitely hey, so who are you, and where do you see yourself going with this, and what steps do you take right now to get there down the track, 5-10 years from now? And we'll keep taking those little small steps. And then I'm fully aware that like half of them might go out and discover another passion that's sort of related to what this all is. And it might not be dancing on stage, or it might not be backup dancing, because every full-timer wants to be a backup dancer at the moment.
Right.
You know, and sometimes I think dreams have a weird way of, you know, you might be on your way to one thing and then this little other thing creeps in and goes, actually, I think you want to do this. So
true.
Trying to keep them open as well.
And I think keeping their options, it is tough, man. It is tough because like, I think because we understand the nature of what it is, and we get it, you know, like it's a grind, you know. I feel like it's very much it's a business, and being smart about these sort of decisions and where you direct your energy is something that I feel like, you know, I at least learned over time, and you know, I had to kind of figure it out on my own. It wasn't something that was really taught to me, you know, this is going back way back now. But I feel like nowadays our generation's so different because of the internet, right? And I don't know if you obviously you remember this, but you know, my generation and earlier, it was like no one moved to America. You know, like there was like a few handful of people who went over there. Right, you know what I mean? But it's like nowadays, because you're kind of always seeing it and it's there, and you're kind of like, oh, this person's done it, that person's done. People have paved the way, you know. And I think we forget how much, you know, these people have done the unknown, and like for, you know, particular generations now. And if I was a dancer now, it's like my line of direction and understanding of the possibilities of what's out there for me as a dancer is just like this now. Before, I had no idea. It was like someone would just tell me, hey, you should do that, and I was like, oh, okay, let me just try it out. You know what I mean? I had no idea. I had no idea that you could dance as a career. And so anyway, I got Simo to thank for that. But so I think they're like in a good place, but then also too. And I don't want to go. I feel like I'm going into this whole social media space right here. You know, I think it's a good and a bad thing, where it's like you can now be inspired and learn so much about this whole space of like career direction and that. But then also too, man, I've been chatting with some teachers recently, and they're saying about like the self-confidence. You know, this generation is like super low at the moment. Do you notice that at the moment? And is it because it's like you've got the whole world to compare with now? You're at competition with everybody else. Is that kind of a thing that maybe is amplified? Or
I totally agree. There's like a brazenness that I never had. Like, as you just saying, I had no idea. Like, I had no idea, but I thought that I had to turn up like I had the idea. You know, like I look back on like when we were doing things like the X Factor, it's like I felt like I had to just turn up to every situation and be like, I'm a pro, I've got this. And I wish that like I'd been able to feel, and it probably is mostly me, like probably my own worst enemy, like so many dancers are, thinking that I had to turn up like I knew everything. And I just wish sometimes that I could turn up and be like, hey, I actually don't got this, but I'm super happy that you've hired me to do it, you know?
right.
So there's like a brazenness, and I don't think it's a confidence, and it's not an audacity in young dancers at the moment, like the people that I teach. But they're bold in a way that I was never able to be bold. And I think it's because I think it is sometimes social media related. Maybe it's parenting differences, schooling, who knows, where they are allowed to sort of like be their authentic self or be a version of themselves. They've sort of figured out a lot of stuff that we never got the opportunity to. But the flip side is I'm like, but can you turn up in the room and be confident in yourself? And like that what I'm hearing from them is like they all want to have more confidence.
Really? Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's
Cool.
a wild little paradox to me, because I'm like, that's part of my responsibility is like, how do I navigate that? I got Facebook when I was in my 20s,
Yeah. Okay, I feel like there's a few things that I want to address, and I don't know. It's not like faking it till you make it, right? That's not what you're talking about, right? When you're kind of showing up, and even if you don't kind of know, you just sort of have to be a little bit confident and be like, you know what, I'm just gonna do my job as like I know what I'm doing.
No, it's not that. I knew I had the goods as a dancer. It was just like I felt like if I got employed to be on a gig, the assumption should be that I know how to do the gig. Like, never really felt like I could ask questions, if I didn't know something, rather
Yeah.
than being like, oh, they see value in me. I'm here. Hey, I've not done this before. Can you tell me how this works? If that
Okay,
makes
gotcha.
the distinction.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying there. Yeah, right. So those are some of the areas that you feel like they're sort of sure they're sure of being unsure of themselves, kind of thing. Is that maybe
Yeah, like
ish?
it sort of would be goal. Yeah, if I'm a dancer and I'm 20 and I get to like in 2024 and I get booked on a gig, I'd be probably bold enough to be like, hey, yeah, I'm here. I think it's like they feel a real sense of like deserving to be somewhere, whereas I'm like full imposter syndrome all the way. But like in essence, they're all still telling me with their words. Like I have meetings
Right.
with my students. They're like, I just want to be more confident. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think like another difference is like I never trained growing up dancing in the 90s, learning to dance in the 90s, early 2000s. I was in a group of 30 every time I learnt to dance. I never once did a solo. The first time I ever did a solo was when I was competing on So You Think You Can Dance, like live on television. And these dancers have had those shows for so long. That's what they're sort of being brought up on, is like become an incredible soloist.
Mm-hmm.
And they're on television. And I used to be like, well, you're never going to have a career doing like a solo. But actually now you can have a career as a soloist, like essentially commercial dancer sort of thing. And I think that's like a really real essential difference for like the upbringing, with a Stedford's competitions and what's on television in terms of dance. Whereas like I just was always in a group dancing with at least 7 other people.
Mm-hmm. I'm same with you on that. I still do not feel confident dancing, doing a solo. It's not something I didn't grow up in that competition environment very often. I hated competing with dance, and I never really wanted to be a solo dancer. I just was like, I love performing. I love kind of like doing it with my friends, kind of thing. That's kind of all where it stemmed from. But then, obviously, as the years went on, doing some jobs, it was like, oh shoot, this would be really handy right now if I knew how to like, be able to do a bit of like soloing and being able to conduct the stage on my own. But
Yep.
yeah, man. So I can totally understand like, what you mean there. But so okay, I'm trying to understand this new generation here because I personally had a little bit of an idea, a few years ago when social media started to come up, was I noticed that they had this sense of, and I don't know if it was confidence, right? And I don't know if whatever it was, maybe it was a bit of arrogance, I'm not too sure. But they would walk into the room, and I just remember going, I never used to walk into the room like that. And I think I learned quickly that
Maybe
they.
maybe
Do you
we
reckon?
did, and we were assholes. And I don't know, maybe the older we should ask them. Maybe the generation above us were like, oh, wow, look at these confident young people.
Oh, so true. Hey, that's so true. Yeah, we could have easily done that. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But I think I learnt that some of these dancers with like this other element of confidence, they were big on social media. And I was kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, right, I see. And I thought maybe there's this, I don't know, maybe I haven't figured this out and I don't understand it. Maybe I'm a bit old school. But do you think those two worlds are now really blended and combined, or do you think it's still quite separated? Like, maybe I'm thinking black and white here, but there's the quote unquote real world, what happens in the industry, in auditions, booking and whatnot, and then there's things that happen on social media, and there's a world of its own there, or do you think that those two are completely connected?
Oh, I don't think they're fully connected yet. Like, I think you can exist on, Instagram, huge following, posting lots of vids, constant validation of, people commenting. I still think you can walk into an audition room and not get the gig, even if you're that person. Excuse me. Where it does blend is when you walk into a room and they go, oh, that person's got 100K followers, so we should book them. But I don't know, are you going to deliver on the gig? Because it's not the same. And I think what I love about what we do is we can exist online, but we have to turn up and do the work and move people and tell a story and be good at what we do and able to move people.
I feel like there's I'm trying to sort of get a really good idea of I guess this younger generation here at the moment, because I feel like this is a space that I'm trying to tap into personally at the moment. And, I think it's easy for me to sort of sit here and think like, oh, I kind of, I feel like I know where to lead them, and based upon my experiences in the past. But I feel like the more I speak to people and the more I'm learning, the more I feel like, geez, man, like, am I just outdated now, maybe, and I don't really understand, because the thing is, I don't know how to perform in front of a camera when it comes to class. That's something that we didn't do, and I felt like with X Factor, we learned how to do it in a week. They freaking do it in that short time span of class, and that still terrifies me, that whatever that beast is. And I had a bit of a moment of like fighting it and being like, oh, it doesn't mean nothing, it doesn't mean, but it's like it's a whole skill in itself, man. And there's like a whole bunch of skills that these young kids know from social media that I'm like, oh, I feel like I need to learn from you guys, because I'm trying to get back into that space here myself. At freaking 35, Sal, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm like, I still have an itch to dance. How sad! I wish I didn't have it. But it's like it's there. Yeah.
I remember waiting to go out on the X Factor or whatever. The Voice was pretty new at that time. There was a couple of gigs on there. All of the TV shows, and we would all start saying the angst. Here comes the angst, and it was this performance anxiety that sort of just hit you just before you went out on to the stage. The stakes felt so high, but in hindsight, I'm like, no one dies. You stuff up. That's okay. But at the time, it felt like the stakes were really high. I like to talk to my students about, it's like teaching someone how to audition, which I'm not the person to do that. I feel like as a commercial dancer, yes, but with musical theatre, I don't feel like I am someone that auditions well. But yeah, in terms of dance, I've always felt pretty confident in that ability. And I just like to talk about it in terms of the amount of hours you spend doing that thing and becoming familiar in the environment enough that when you walk in, when the camera comes out, you might get that performance anxiety that hits you like you would in an audition, or like you would go and teach a huge class at a convention or regular class, wherever you feel nervous going out on stage to perform live. Knowing that you have the experience and training and familiarity to back yourself up despite how you feel emotionally or in that moment. And I think that's what it is for us. We just spent a lot less time there with a proper, pro cam in front of us, working it for a camera. Maybe there's
Gotcha.
and I think I'm seeing this a little more. Probably there's less of a skill to go out and really move someone live on stage that needs to be taught. And maybe that's the outcome of putting cameras in front of kids all the time. That we focus on that skill.
Say that last time.
Could
There's
be wrong.
less of a skill. No. I'm trying to.
And I feel like we put cameras in front of kids from quite a young age now, so they are honing that skill through those like teen pivotal years of like finding yourself and becoming comfortable in that situation. And maybe there is less of a skill for being out on stage and find whatever that stage presence thing is or connection with the audience that really moves people. Because what happens, I think, with film is like the choreography is the star a lot of the time. Like, we see a lot of vids from class where there's 5 dancers and I'm viewing it on a screen this big most of the time. So I'm looking at shape mostly. I'm not looking at their facial expressions. But when you're on stage, you're going to be looking at here first. And that's where you get your information from, and everything else is sort of like fueling what that is, I think.
Wow. So you feel like potentially that this is almost like a dying thing of like being able to, be really good like as a live performer sort of thing, and there needs to be more shift and focus into sort of like delivering onto a camera?
Not necessarily that it's dying. Yeah, sorry. Not necessarily that it's dying, but hey, if you compared dancers at the very early stage of their career right now to dancers maybe 20, 30 years ago, I feel like that's what we might discover is that they were like I trained with Robert Storick in Melbourne. For 2 years, and Rob's trained so many of Australia's most fiercest dancers that I look up to that are overseas choreographing, dancing, or in Australia doing amazing things. And he trained a lot of his dancers by getting them in on doing the training in the studio, but then getting them in a nightclub 2 to 3 times a week for a gig every week. So you're constantly honing your craft in performance live and getting that feedback from the audience.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like if we compare that sort of a training to what's happening now, maybe we would see differences. I can't say for certain. I know nothing, but that's my guess.
Wait, no, come on, Sal. Like you know a lot and you just said something that actually has got my mind ticking because hang on, I'm trying to think right now from the younger generation's perspective, right? And look, I came up being inspired by watching things that I saw on TV because that's all we had, right? So I saw Michael Jackson, I saw Michael Jackson backup dancers, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I want to do that, right? These days, though, these kids, they're seeing different things and they're inspired by different things. Now, why wouldn't they be driven to want to do those things naturally? Okay. And now, why not, when I look at it from like a career perspective, I mean, I'm not going to mention names here, but I found out that you can make a killing off doing, just, I mean, just doing content, bit of content creating, or promoting, posting things for ads and like for companies, whatever. And why would you not, like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Why would you not try to smash that space? Because there's just so much more money there too, as a dancer as well, if you make it in those spaces. And I don't have any of that knowledge or like, you know what I mean, advice, like, to be like, don't do that. But I'm catching myself almost like wanting to say, hey, don't focus so much on like trying to get viral or get picked out on class, because that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to become a good professional dancer in the real world. And when you go into auditions, that doesn't equate to this and this and that. But wait, hang on. But if you look at it from maybe like the bigger picture, that could lead itself into something else that we just don't even know. And you know what I mean? So I'm kind of just thinking out loud out here, and I'm like,
no, I love it. I'm like, hang on, what can I be selling online right now? But the number one thing that I really think about it, like I was just listening to you, and I'm like, if I knuckle down on like, what is the reason that I do what I do? And it may be my focus has shifted through different sort of jobs, roles, responsibilities. But early days, I wanted to be on stage.
Yeah,
there was a feeling that I got while dancing on a stage from live performance that I was obsessed with and addicted to. And, we could try and put that into words, but I don't think we can. And that's why what we do is so special. And none of that stuff gets you that. But maybe the driver, maybe that, like, sometimes you'll say to people like, hey, what's your dream gig? Like, I sometimes love to do the awkward circle of, I call it the circle of shame, or the circle of love, depending on what, where if I teach a new group of people, I just get them in a circle and they have to tell me their name, because I love to learn everyone's names as quick as I can. And they either, have to tell me a fact about themselves, or sometimes I say, tell me your name and your dream gig. And it doesn't have to be all of the dream gigs, and you don't have to have just one. Just tell me a dream gig. And some people will say, I want to teach at blah, blah, blah convention. Like their dream gig is teaching for one weekend at a big dance festival, which is a valid dream to have. I'm like, great. What are you going to do for the other 51 weekends of the year? Like that's a great gig. And have you thought about what else you're going to do for every other day of the year? Maybe the driver isn't, I want to be on stage now. Maybe because we have a different way of consuming. Maybe the driver is, I want to be that thing that I see, which is what we had.
Yeah.
It's just a different.
I guess, no, you're right. Maybe the drive is different. I hope that the drive is coming from that place of where, it's fulfilling their soul, so to speak. I don't want to be a little bit wishy-washy here, but I think sometimes, and even myself, included, I feel like you can get drawn to these sort of things because of what it looks like on the outside, not really understand what the thing is, happening on the inside. Like, people like, I want to be a guitarist, rock player, rock star guitarist, but then they're trying to like actually play the freaking guitar. They're like, I hate this or whatever it is. I don't know. Like that's probably a bad example, but you know what I mean? It's like it's understanding what the experience is from the other side. It's easy to be like seeing it from there, and oh man, yeah, it's yeah.
Because,
I think it's important.
Yeah, and yes, and like if you're attracted to all of this outside stuff, you have to turn up and do a job. If you're like, as like we know that often it's kind of thing of like, don't meet your idols. Sometimes you might hold a certain sort of dance job in such high esteem, and you might get there and yet you have a really shit time. Because of the conditions, because of the people, because of the choreographer, because of the costume, because you got the shit one or something, because no one gave you a parking spot. I don't know what it is, but it's like, or like, doing a film, like that's an amazing gig on paper. You get paid good money if it's a good budget film.
Mm-hmm.
You turn up and it's really hard work and you don't enjoy it a lot of the time because the work is hard. So unless you really, really, really love it, that's gonna be I think to reconcile. Like teaching a convention. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you go. Teaching convention
like, if that's your dream gig. Yeah. If that's the dream gig, to me, like that sounds super stressful. Like
right, gotcha. Yeah, because
like you get a bite of doing class, but like there's a lot involved in teaching for one weekend, probably for many hours a day.
I have only just started to understand a bit more of myself as a dancer in my later years, like in my recent years, and I just did whatever I did in the beginning, and I just said yes to whatever job came through, and then obviously when I started to understand the industry a little bit, I was kind of like, well, I don't know when my next paycheck's coming, so this job's coming through, yes, this one's coming through, okay, yep, and it wasn't until like I found myself burnt out and injured and going like I love this though, but why and really thinking about it, and I started to sort of like go, oh, I have said yes to these jobs that I didn't really like because I didn't know at the time, right? And actually, it's Teresa Espinosa that really sort of like changed my whole perspective on it. She was like, I've never said yes and done things that I didn't want to do. Because I sort of said to her, I was like, have you ever had to do things that you didn't want, or like maybe it was just really hard work, whether if it's like 10 shows a week or something like that. I feel like no matter how much I love something, if I do it that many times a week, it's just, and yeah, so when she said that, I was like, oh wow, but I don't feel like we've got that privilege in Australia to be picky, to be saying I want to do this and want to do that, right?
Yeah.
Hey.
Such a fan of Teresa Espinosa. Like ever since they were here with Brittany, maybe in like 2003 or 4. Beautiful dancer. But just hearing you say that, I was like, oh, well, wouldn't that be nice? Like, wouldn't that be nice if you can pick and choose? But
totally.
I think that you should, and I'm the same. I thought I had to say yes to everything. But sometimes also the flip side of that is like the gig that you might not know too much about can be a life change, or the gig that doesn't pay you as well as the others. Maybe that's going to change your life. And you don't know until you get there.
Honestly, I feel like whenever and this is just me personally, personal experience, whenever I've decided to say yes because of money, when I did it for my dancing, it's always become a different experience for me. I can relate it from the very, very first gig that I did when I did a cruise ship. My first cruise ship contract. I was like, oh, I love it because this is my first job I'm ever doing. I'm traveling around the world. I'm doing what I love doing. It's amazing. The second one I did, I was like, I want to move to Sydney, so I'm going to save up. I'm going to do this contract. And it was just a whole different thing, you know, even though I was doing the
Yeah.
same thing. And I don't regret it because I was like, this is what I had to do. But it just,
Yeah.
Have you had that before too? When you're like, I need this money here,
Yeah.
so I'm going to do it, and it's changed the experience?
I've always, like my husband, who, you know, Tim, he works in the industry. He's an actor and a fight director. Like I've always been like, don't ever take the gig for money. Take the gig because you want to do it. And then ask for more money.
Right.
And then demand more. You know, take it out of love, not fear. It's so simple,
Right.
but it's I think that that's where I've gone for, like, you know, going back to what we first spoke about. Like, that's where I'm like, if I felt uncertain and I've gone, I need the stability in the past, maybe, you know, instead not money, you know, maybe that's where I've got, or like, I've had moments where I'm like, I want to do this gig, but I know I'm going to feel crappy about myself.
Right.
But I think that's my thing. It's like I've, you know, if say you work for someone and you just didn't have a good time, and then that opportunity comes up again, and walking back into that, and I'm like, well, I didn't have a good time. But it's not about money necessarily. It's about, am I going into this and I'm going to be better equipped emotionally, so I'm going to feel better about myself this time and the job that I'm doing. So I think I've sort of like compromised my self-worth, but not for money, just for like, on paper I should be doing this gig because it's it's a, you know.
And can I say,
also,
can I add to that? Yeah. I was just going to say, I feel like too, because it's such a competitive environment, and maybe I'm sharing a bit of my strategies here that I kind of like developed like back in the day, but like I felt like, actually, you know what? Joel told me this. So this is a bit of Joel, you know, passing on his whole thing, but it was like, but what he said was so true though. There's only X amount of spots available in the industry, and when you say no and you can't make it, do you know what I mean? That's a really competitive mindset to go about it, and it's quite ruthless. But he's right though. It's like, imagine like there's only 5 spots on the top of the bill, right? And look, I'm not saying that this is the right way to do it, but generally speaking, it's like, you know, if you can't make it and you have to say no, somebody else fills that spot in, and then it's an opportunity for them to, you know, continue on kind of doing work. That's, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that. But did you ever see it from that perspective?
I think there was a period of time, and I think it's a really sort of like competitive way to go about it. And I definitely did see the world that we're in like that.
Right.
For sure. Probably like in my mid-20s, somewhere along there. At the height of like working, well, not at the height, at probably the beginning of getting super busy as a dancer for me. But I don't know if I think that it works like that anymore. I don't know.
True.
I think,
yeah,
I don't know if we needed to think like that. Maybe it was, I don't know. That's really interesting, because every great gig I think I got early on was because someone else wasn't available. But I think if you're good and you turn up and you do the work and you're a lovely person to work with, whatever that means for the people that have hired you, then they're going to have you back if you said no one time.
Yeah, you're right.
And then it's sort
You
of
are right in
like,
a sense.
if they don't, do you want to be there anyway? I think that's where I've matured, is like, only so many gigs. People will want you. And then if they don't, is there much point in thinking about it? No. And another one will come around.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think my urge, and this is just me, I'm just relating it back to myself. I think it's because for me, I had that sense of urgency because I didn't really have any other way of, earning an income. And I remember I was trying to teach one time at a studio, and then like rehearsals kept falling into that day, and then I had to keep canceling and say no, and then I was like, I feel bad because I can't commit, and I felt like if I committed to doing this, I couldn't commit as much to doing that, and I'd have to say no to one thing or the other, you know what I mean? But then as the years went on, and then I found myself in lulls in careers, I was like, I didn't have that teaching experience behind me to fall back on, and then I was like, oh, what do I do? And so that's why I kind of asked you earlier on. I was like, how important do you think it is for like dancers to be able to sort of like have a skill like teaching to fall back on during these lulls? Because we always go through these lulls. It's inevitable. You know what I mean? And like, I feel like, what do we do in between those times is kind of what I wish I had a bit more, tools under my thing to develop. But yeah, anyways, but.
Hey, I wish that I could have just been dancing every single day and probably not teaching in between times as well. Those periods. Having said that, teaching is the skill that I think I draw on as a choreographer. Because that's what you're doing. You're teaching, I've worked with various levels of dance ability. When you work in musical theatre, it might be you're doing movement on a cast of actors, and a couple of them are really coordinated and the others are less coordinated, or whatever it is. And that's the skill, is this teaching little kids how to learn to dance or whatever. Yeah. So I'm grateful that I've always done it, but I've also really enjoyed it. Like, my parents are school teachers. I think I always have lent into that quite naturally anyway. And
Gotcha.
choreographing, that's sort of where you find your style as well. Like, I think if you get some really lovely students that dance well, you get to actually be really creative, and it's really fulfilling in that creative way as well.
Yeah. And it's like, without that, you wouldn't be where you are now, and you wouldn't have been offered those positions as well, whether if it's like assisting on particular jobs, and you know what I mean? And that's sort of like built up to how you are where you are right now. So I wish I had a bit more of that, I guess, passion towards it. I'm not going to say like never say never, but yeah, you know what? It's a tricky space, man, to navigate, a career as dancers, and I feel like we just got to be like well equipped as much as possible, wherever we can, sort of thing. But look, Sal, I actually, as I was sort of like thinking about, jumping on this pod with you, there was a memory that had come up for me that I felt like I just needed to sort of like I felt like I needed to apologize, right? And yeah, no, 100%, because there was, I've got so much respect for you, and even just, as sharing the stage as dancers, and you've been like a superior towards on jobs with me, and then I remember you booking me on this one job, and I was late, man, like super late, right? I can't remember. Do you remember that? No, but like
you're like needing to apologize to me, and I've got another fun memory after this. What job was this? Like a
this was
television? We're going.
Wait, what was it? It was I can't remember what the gig. It was like a Cuban style gig thing. But
yeah, like sort of corporate gig, hey.
it was, and like I've never like look, I was at a really bad time in my life back then. I was letting a lot of people down in that time of my life. I don't know how I still managed to like pull through with a career like after that period of my life, but it was like I was kind of thinking to myself, I never wanted her to think that was ever personal, and I feel like my professionalism and how I approach the job and how I treat people on it is a big part of how I've gotten to where I have. And to show up late like that, like it was like 2 hours, something like that. It was really not cool. Or
Did
something
you
I'd never
do the
done,
gig
and I was
though?
like,
Like
damn, what's that?
you
Okay.
did the gig though, right?
Yeah, no, I did the gig, but it was like the rehearsal, man. But like, but like
Yeah.
for some people, that could be, well, this is how I've always seen it. That could be a make or break sometimes, depending on where you are in your career.
Yeah, like I think this is more who I am now. I don't think I would have taken that personally. I'd like to think that I was concerned about you, to be honest. Maybe an eye roll at the least, but like I don't know if this is because I'm a parent now, but if that happened right now, I'd 100% be like, send people out for Chris. I'm worried about Chris.
Oh.
But I had more pride back in the day, so maybe I would have been like, it's personal, but I forgot about that. And now I remember. But hey, you've done the gig and been fierce, so don't even worry. But I appreciate your brave apology. Thank you.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, it popped up, and I was like, I kind of just want to bring it up, But yeah. So, well, okay. Well, I'm glad that like,
I would have said like, if you were, I always felt like, and being an assistant and stuff, when you're the one responsible for getting dancers in a room at the same time, ready for rehearsal,
yeah.
like I always used to think like, oh, the boys get away with so much more shit. Like you could rock up late, get a little eye roll, but like if a woman a female dancer turned up late, they wouldn't get any more gigs. I don't know if that's true. I feel like, there's always exceptions in the industry where you go, oh, that person does all those shit things that I would never do. And they're still here. They still get asked along. So, yeah.
Well, it is so much more tougher, the competition for females, man. And like you guys, I could not even imagine like what it would be like if I was in an industry where there was equally amount, same guys as there is girls. I'd get crushed. I'd get completely crushed. So like the fact that you guys are like, but the fact that you guys are there, like, that I have so much respect for you, for you guys to rock up in those auditions and to have that many people, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a really, really impressive. So,
yeah.
But hey, usually kind of like I feel like coming towards the end of the segment here, but like, look, Sal, like, I feel that retiring as a dancer is something that we don't really speak of. And like sort of the thoughts and the feelings that come with, having to depart the stage. Like we share, like you said, there's that thing that we share, right? That you can't really put words to. It's that thing that we love, and we've been doing it for such a long time, but sadly, it's not forever, like on that scale. And you know how have you like come to terms with it, or have you dealt with it in the past, or are you still something that you're dealing with it now? Do you miss it? Do you feel like you're going to come back to it? Like, yeah. Do you want to sort of weigh in a little bit about your experience?
I just find that passion in other ways now. I love choreographing. You know, right now I love having a big group of people who, you know, just like us, they're just younger, they're just at that early stage of leaving high school and wanting to do this thing. That's sort of where I get my buzz right now. I think this sort of transition actually started earlier than it happened. I was like on a gig dancing for Kylie Minogue with the Square Division on, I think it was the X Factor one year, and I was standing there and I had my feather fan and I was like, we were doing some blocking and I was like, I'm miserable right now. And I just sort of realized, and I'm like, it's Kylie Minogue. Like, no one should be miserable doing blocking for Kylie Minogue. And that was tough. I'm like, oh, you're at the sort of like, you know, it's a great gig. Who wouldn't want to be doing that? And I wasn't happy in that moment. So I freaked out. And I went, oh, I just need to like remember why I love this, because I'd been working so much that I was like, I need to remember why I love to dance. So I went to LA for 2 months and I trained for 2 months. And I remembered, and the outcome of that trip was I'm like super happy that I've rekindled the love. I found it, and it was not in the work, it was in dancing. And I don't need to do it all the time to have that. And that gave me a lot of freedom. That was around the time that I, you know, created a little tap dance show called Girls on Tap, because I thought that's a little area that needs attention in Australia. And that's another podcast. That's a big job, creating a new thing, you know what I mean? And that sort of had its own sort of like pathway. Started, like, I'd already been choreographing a couple of things and I'd been a lot of people's assistant or dance captain or whatever. Still enjoyed doing that. Yeah. And then I did one more show, a musical at the Hayes Theatre Co., little small theatre in Potts Point. And that's one of those gigs that, like, you know, low budget musical theatre production, and it sort of got me fully out of that rut of like, I don't know what my relationship is with dance right now. And that was the thing where I went, oh, I really love this. And I am happy to have it in my life, but it doesn't have to be all the time, like as if performing on stage.
Gotcha. So
yeah, and also like my body it just wouldn't hold up either.
Gotcha.
And maybe it'd be different if I didn't have like certain injuries along the way as well. Like maybe the enjoyment would have stayed there. I don't know, but like teaching, all of these other random little skills and jobs and stuff that I've done along the way. Like I've done a degree at uni. There would have been times where I was like, all the dancers hanging out in a green room and I was next door trying to get an essay done for my ancient history or whatever. You know, all of that random stuff that you sort of like end up doing along the way, it's all part of that like other purpose that you have beyond dance. So if you retire from, you know, performing, you can keep in touch, but use some other thing, you know, do some other things along the way.
And this was like a natural thing that you were doing? Were you conscious of it? Or was you just like, when you look back, you're like, oh yeah, I can see how all these things sort of now led me to where you are right now? Or were you like, I know that I'm going to finish dancing soon, so I better do all this other stuff in the meantime?
Oh, no. It's just like, yeah, I'll do that thing. I'm interested in that at the moment. And then like the job I'm in right now, you're like, oh, this is one of those weird times where everything I've done really led me to this point. And I feel confident and and like I am so where I need to be. I don't know if I've ever really felt like that in terms of like my life, my family, where I'm at as a dancer as well. This right now that's one of those times. And also that was a consideration. Like I knew I wanted to have kids at some point. I didn't do a lot to set myself up, but I definitely made decisions like I wanted to work in Sydney, knowing that I would have a life, you know.
Gotcha. It's so it fascinates me to hear that about you, because I think, you know, from an outsider looking in, I think, Sal, like you've always been, to me anyways, like, you know, when I first came into Sydney, you were like one of the working dancers, you know, you were in the group of the working dancers, and I remember Joel being like, these are the people that you want to get in with. And I was always like looking up to you and watching you, and you're always just smashing everything, you're doing everything right. And then, you know, you went on to do like other things outside of like dancing roles. And, you know, I always just sort of assumed that maybe, oh, this is always planned. But now that you've said that, it's sort of just happened, and that's a beautiful thing too. And that's sort of inspiring as well, to know that, you know, hey, like you can just sort of like go with how, you know, go with the flow, and sort of keep following, I guess, you know, certain like opportunities and stuff that come your way. And maybe perhaps everything doesn't have to be sort of pre-planned and stuff like that. And yeah, I think that's where I'm finding myself a bit.
That's cool. Also, I think something that can be really valuable, and this is like, I'm really passionate about our industry in Australia. It's a really great place to be. I think it has been for years, decades before we even got here. And I think I got to a point that instead of being like selfishly, I want to get a lot of gigs and, you know, do that thing that Joel said and be like, no, it's my spot. No one else gets to have it or whatever.
Yeah.
There was some sort of switch within me that was like, actually, what's my contribution? What can I contribute to, you know, the tapestry that is the Australian performing entertainment industry? And at one point it was like, you know, I was waiting for someone to create like a tap show or a tap group with female tap dancers, because so far we'd had, you know, Tap Dogs, Hot Shoe Shuffle, and now Tap Pack, all male tap shows. So I went, oh, like someone should do that. And then one day I went, oh, I think at this point I'm recognizing that should be me, where I'm at, and where, you know, I just was like, there's no one right now that I think is going to do it. Oh, I could do it, sort of thing.
Wow.
Now I think that space is filled. There are fierce females around. So I'm like, I don't feel much responsibility to be that, you know. So definitely that for me was like around the age of like 29, 30 maybe, of being like, actually, how do I contribute to what is already here and what already exists in this like incredible industry that's already existed for a long time before I even arrived. And that's still what I'm doing right now. And that's I guess the driver is like, oh, thanks for making me have this realization. You know, it's like whether it's producing a show or teaching people or, you know, being the course coordinator that crafts the course for the people to go out into the industry, like that's the contribution.
Yeah. I've always tried to come from a place of giving. When you know, I've only got really my performances to sort of like relate to it in that. But yeah, I think sort of if I have ever felt like I've tapped into that mindset of like, what can I get out of it? It's been the worst. Like, it hasn't really turned out turned out great, you know, for sure. So yeah, I feel like that's something that I am now wanting to do. I think more of is sort of think about how can I contribute, and you know, I've got my own insecurities and stuff like that where I feel like I don't have much to contribute. But then, you know, talking to a few of these dancers, I feel that I almost feel like that Oscar Wilson said this. It's like if you've got something to share, then share it. It's not yours to hold and keep, and if you have something like that's to give, you know what I mean, and it's not yours to hold. I went, oh, okay. So that kind of sort of like got me out of this sort of like self-absorbed, like, oh, poor me, not poor me, but you know, just, you know, oh, like what are other people going to think? But it's like, what about that person that you might be able to help too? You know what I mean? But yeah,
it's like teaching, and this is often what you know, if I'm turning up to teach a class or choreograph something on like people that I really respect, it's like, what am I going to teach these people? You know, they're incredible at what they do. And then you turn up and you find the thing and you go, this is where, like some of my students at the moment, I'm like, I'm not sure I have much more than that I can tell you. But I turn up every day and I go, oh, I actually know exactly what we need to be doing right now, you know, and this is what you're doing here. You're contributing because.
Yeah. Sorry, you go.
Oh no, it's like, this is what you're doing right now. This is your contribution right now. It's like, how can you share what your unique experience is, to try and, you know, if I share my experience and you do yours, and there's someone out there that's going to listen to one thing and they take that one thing and in 5 years from now they go, oh, that's what those crazy people meant when they said that thing. Then you've done it, you know?
Right. Yeah. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, Sal, but I know that like I know when like if I try to be like coming more from a giving place, then you know, I think things like, even if I can't see it or figure it out, things will sort of like work out. But man, yeah, right now I don't know if I really want to be talking about myself too much, but yeah, I want to somehow do something with the experiences that I've gathered, you know. Because what a waste! I feel like it'd be a waste, don't you reckon? Imagine, Sal, like you've got so much experience and knowledge. Imagine that was to not be now sort of like passed on. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's not for everyone. I'm not too sure, but yeah.
I think everyone would say if I didn't pass it on. But yeah, what if, like, I've had so many mentors. I still do. And I've sort of kept them along the way. Like, I've collected them. Sorry, I need to cough on.
No, go for it.
What if I'm that for someone, and I don't put myself out there as someone that can share and mentor someone else, and then they never get their chance because they don't have that person that believes in them, or that person that gives them that one piece of advice. Or actually, it's not even about advice sometimes. Sometimes it's like just going, hey, well, what do you want to do? Like, trust that and go with that. Or sometimes, you know, I find myself at these days, like, calling my friends and being like, hey, you know, this traumatic situation that you're currently in, you are allowed to quit your job. Like, that seems to be the conversation that I'm having these days. A lot of my friends are operating as, you know, at a top level of like choreographer, director, or something, you know, like in that sort of leadership position where they're working with a team. And yeah, often I think this happens putting together a musical or some sort of production where people get stressed. There's a lot at stake. some people can turn up and make your day-to-day life really not very enjoyable. It can be really hard to just do what you've been employed to do, which is choreograph something, you know. And it sounds crazy saying this right now because, like, I'm like, we're all just making some theatre. It should be an enjoyable experience, but it's often not. And you know, I find the conversation is like, well, you know what? If you want to, I give you permission as your friend to walk out of this situation as well.
Right. It's like you've caught them in this sort of like what's the word? Not a panic. Yeah, what is it? What's that thing? When you have one of those like panic attacks and you feel like there's no way out of it, and it's like for you to just be like, guess what? There's actually this option too, sort of thing, and it's just made them go, oh, oh. Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah, in a way, I think it's like we prioritize, you know, the work. We still 20 years later, you can still want to get a gig and keep it. just like back in the day, but it's different. And then I think we forget that, like, once we're there, I think this is like we're going down a different path. We could spend another hour chatting about this as well. It's like once you're there, we don't feel like we can ever just like leave that situation. We have to see the project through because it's so up there on a pedestal, like the art or whatever we are creating. But I guess my, like, you know,
yeah.
Being some sort of like sharing knowledge or being some sort of mentor or whatever, like I feel really uncomfortable calling myself that. But then I think about the mentors that I've had along the way, and they all still are, like they've been there for 20 years or longer actually. Yeah, it's like if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be the person I am. I wouldn't have had certain career opportunities that I did. But I think more importantly, the person as well.
Do you feel like we lack it a little bit?
What do you mean? Like
do you feel like we lack mentors and stuff like that, you know, for dancers in our industry?
I definitely can tell, well, not definitely, nothing's definite. I often can tell when someone sort of has gone through a period of time and not had one.
Whoa,
sort of thing.
really?
Like not that. I believe so.
Well, can you? Yeah. Like, what is it? What is it? Can you?
Just like, who's either in their corner telling them they can do it in their darkest moments?
Okay. Oh.
Or like, who's in their corner telling them they shouldn't do it? No, it's it's like sometimes I go, I wonder if someone's looking out for that person. Like, I wonder if that person has a sounding board. Or like, you know, maybe it's someone that goes, hey, you know, you don't need to limit yourself to what other people, you know, like I found there was periods of my career where like I was the lyrical teacher for a good 4 years, and everyone at all the schools wanted me to teach lyrical before it was really a big thing like it is now. And then like working on television and other stuff, like everyone wanted me to go to the dance school and teach commercial jazz. And then I sort of goes on top. Everyone wanted to teach me to teach tap at their dance school. And it's like sometimes those labels that other people give us are really limiting. So maybe hearing information to the contrary is going to be really beneficial for that person as well. Like you don't need to be
gotcha.
Like everyone else seems to get, like the box that other people put you in.
For sure, and the industry is quick and easy to put you in a box because it's just, you're just a product in the end of the day, and if you can make money and you're that particular thing, like it's like, okay, well, man, I can't, I know my product. I've definitely been the token Asian guy many a times, and I'm like, all right, that's my kind of position. That's okay, but don't get me wrong. There have been times when I've kind of felt down about myself when I was like, is that all I am, or am I just being booked because of this or that? But I think as I've gotten older, I'm just like, you know what, this thing is a business, right? And if you can kind of like, I feel like if you can kind of figure out where you lie in that space of the business and what you can offer and as a product and kind of things like that, and separate yourself and be like, that's just I don't know, work, that's business, it is what it is, it doesn't define me. Maybe that might possibly be a way to not get so lost in it. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Am I talking about something different here right now? A little bit different.
No, we're talking about
Like
similar things. Like, yeah, similar, you just keep doing what you're
doing. Yeah.
Just despite the boxes that other people put you in.
Yeah, the boxes, man. Freaking. Okay, so right. So you kind of. I feel like the box sometimes can work in your favor too. In Australia, especially because it's such a small community. It's like there's only this many types of this type of dancer and that type of dancer, and maybe you got to, this box isn't yet filled, so maybe you want to try and fill that box. I don't know. That's like really looking at it strategically, like, business-wise and whatnot. But yeah.
Totally can work in your favor. It's like knowing your strengths, but not letting that limit you, I guess. Definitely in Australia, like we all know, you have to do everything to have a real career. Like, and I see the people that really jump from, like, if I'm talking about dancers, from musical theatre to commercial dance to like choreography, creative direction. And they're people I really look up to with like real deal careers, and they didn't let someone put them in a box. Or you just jump from one to the other at different times. This box analogy goes so far.
Fuck the box, man. I don't like the box at all. It's not cool. The more I look at it, I'm like, nah, it's not cool at all. But hey, this last part of the segment is just sort of like, I know you've been just dropping like, truth bombs left, right, and center, but if there was like a message to your like younger self here, after, throughout all the years that you've, acquired all this experience, is there something that really like sticks out for you that you kind of want to say, or perhaps to the younger gen right now? I'm sure you tell them all the time, but
there's probably a couple. I think I touched on one earlier, which is you don't have to turn up acting like you've got everything under control. You're allowed to turn up and ask people how to do things, and admit. And this is more to myself, I think, over the years. Like, I think once I started being honest with myself that, like, actually, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just doing my best. That really worked for me. And also, this is not a message to my younger self, but I think it's sort of important to say this when you're having conversations about your journey as a dancer. It's like, maybe this doesn't happen for everyone, but I've had real love-hate I've had mostly love for, I love dance. There has been dark moments along the way where I don't want to say I hated it. I feel like I'm betraying dance as a thing if I say I hated dance. I think like as a career, sometimes I just was like, I want to run away. I am not cut out for this. That's happened throughout up until, recently. And in those moments, what I did was I just kept going. And it was whatever that thing was that kept me going at the time. Because on the other side of that, you find the next thing. And the third thing and the final thing is probably that, like, all of this doesn't matter as much as the people that you collect along the way, because that's the most special part of my career, is the friendships, relationships, mutual sort of respect for people. That's the most beautiful thing I think about the career, like having a career in this sort of thing, because the people are really special. And you get to meet a lot of people as a dancer, more so than I think people in other workplaces, because we're constantly showing up to new experiences and new groups of people. And like talking about your career is, I love it. It's really fulfilling, but like at the end of the day, collect some really great people that you're going to take with you until the end, because that's cooler.
That's awesome. Well, hey, thank you. Hey, thank you so much, Sal. And it just amazes me just to hear, everything that you shared with me today, and just to, I guess, be vulnerable here and fill us in on, some of these like challenges, things, stuff like that you've been through, and it's really eye-opening, and I'm sure that there will be people who really find value in what you've shared with us today, and also too, like how lucky for these new gen of dancers to have such an awesome teacher like you. So thank you again, Sal, for coming on board.
Thanks for having me.
And I'll see you on the other side. Okay.
See ya.